So since people have generally responded well to my British take on videos, I've done one on AOC, I've done one on Bernie Sanders, and I've done one on Andrew Yang, I thought I would do another one, and I think I'll keep continuing this series since people seem to like it. But today I'm going to focus on Donald Trump. Now this might be the most obvious person to make a video on and everything, but I have got some comments asking me what my opinion on Trump is and how British people view him and everything, and I have a list of other people, and I know people want me to get to Tulsi Gabbard and Beto O'Rourke and Mayor Pete and things like that, which I will do in due time. We've got a long time till the first Democratic debate and everything. And I just feel with people like O'Rourke and Gabbard and everything, I just need to do a bit more research to make a good video about it. But I will in the future. This will be a longer running series, hopefully try and get one out every week. But yeah, so let's do Donald Trump this week, and it's really, a massive topic, and where do we even start with someone like him? Now I'm thinking, instead of going into every policy he's done, all the bad things he's done, I think I might talk in more broader terms and what he sort of represents in America, rather than going into the nitty-gritty of his criminal life and how he conned his way into the White House and everything like that. So I first became aware of Donald Trump when he was pushing the birtherism conspiracy against the former President Obama, saying that he had proof that Obama was actually born in Kenya. I think that was the gist of the general movement, and then saying he had all this evidence. But then I remember when Obama made that joke at the White House Correspondents' Dinner that really pissed off Trump, talking about how stupid this was, and Obama took it really well because it actually was really, really racist to push this on the first black president. And of course when he had no evidence at all, and he's basically never apologized for it, like it is really, really fucked up and everything. But yeah, that's the first instance I had been exposed to, and basically when I found out who he was, I was like, who is this guy? And then someone told me he does The Apprentice in the US, which I didn't know was the original one. I'm pretty sure it is, because we have The Apprentice here in the UK, and it's hosted by a guy called Lord Alan Sugar, so he's sort of like a Cockney businessman, but from what I gather and from what he often says in the show, he's kind of self-made. Like, he left school at 16 and he built up his own business from like the streets and stuff. So while that's like a complete opposite to Trump, who got a small loan of $1 million when he came out of college and inherited $400 million untaxed dollars when his dad passed away. Now, to get my perspective on Trump on an individual level, I think it's embarrassing how stupid he is and how arrogantly stupid he is. All the things he says about climate change, just the way he speaks and the way he tweets and everything. It's a guy who's never been brought down to any sort of level, and because to be so proudly stupid, imagine what sort of environment you have to grow up in that everyone tells you how great a job you're doing at everything. You probably have so many yes men around you talking about how great you are all the time, and in essence, I can understand how he's become so fucked up, and you see it with a lot of rich people and a lot of celebrities. But because he's also been validated every single time, like, he goes out of business, he goes broke, and then his dad bails him out, or then he goes so bankrupt he doesn't even have to pay tax anymore in the 1990s, and then he runs probably the worst campaign for president of all time. He exposes himself as a real stupid con man throughout the campaign, yet he still gets the top job in America and becomes the most powerful man in the world. He sort of fails his way into becoming the most powerful man in the world, and I think that says a lot about America in general, that just because he says he's a billionaire, which, lately we've been talking about the Deutsche Bank stuff, where they think he's actually worth only 300 million, but he kept inflating his worth to like 3 billion. But because he's a rich man, even though he's insanely stupid, he gets taken seriously. Like, for example, if you stacked it up, whose opinion would carry more weight on politics and international issues? Let's say, for example, I'm just like a standard guy, so I have a history degree and a master's in international relations, right? Before he was elected president, who do you think's opinion would be worth more, And let's take it in a broad example. Let's say like a famous university teacher or something, let's say, or a famous journalist like Seymour Hersh or Noam Chomsky or something like that. Shouldn't their opinion matter a lot more than someone like Donald Trump? But he always had a platform to talk about politics just because he was rich, and they overlooked the fact he was actually insanely dumb. And that points to what Trump represents in America more than a lot of other countries, including the UK. It's just that if you have money, people take you seriously. So look at Howard Schultz running for president. What has he ever done you know, that's helped people really. He's a CEO of Starbucks, or he was. I forget if he currently is. And he's running for president, but people take it seriously because he's a billionaire. But he has no qualifications for the job apart from running a business. And we've seen how, you know, that's worked out this time with a billionaire president. And compare that to the UK. So I think in the UK, you could make the argument that we do like rich people in a way because, you know, the Tory party have dominated our politics for so long. But at the same time, I think in the UK, you can't get away with being rich and stupid at the same time, a lot of the time. Like, you at least have to speak intelligently. You can't speak like a fucking... I don't even know how old, you know, his language is. Maybe like... like 8 years old, maybe 10. Just the way he speaks is so basic. Whether someone like Theresa May, who obviously isn't stupid, but you know, you don't really trust her, she at least speaks very intelligently, and she is an intelligent person in a lot of regards, even though I really disagree with her politics and everything. And she's wealthy. And then we have other people like Alan Sugar, who, even though he does have like the Cockney accent and everything, he does speak intelligently about business and things like that, so you kind of trust this guy knows what he's talking about. And with Trump, he can't even talk about business properly, just talking about, you know, I have the best jobs. And people are saying he's got narcissistic personality disorder. And a main feature of that is people think they are the best at everything, even when they have no right to be. So you all heard that quote. Nobody knows more than Trump about, you know, whatever, like Christianity, guns, war, foreign policy, Kim Jong-un, North Korea. No one knows more than Trump because he's so narcissistic. He genuinely thinks he's the smartest person in the room, despite probably being the dumbest person in every room he's been in since he's become president. So from a British perspective, I think that's a cultural thing in America where they just worship money, like to an extent that we don't here in the UK, and that they worship it so much. Someone like Donald Trump can just fail his way into being president because he has the illusion of being insanely wealthy. So let's get to another point. Trump is also very racist, which I touched on with the birtherism stuff. And basically you see it in his policies in the White House, the Muslim ban, you know, ramping up the deportations, ramping up the things like the ICE camps and everything. And on my live stream on Sunday night, we were sort of talking about this. He is a backlash against a black president. And what he represents to me is the fundamental core of America that has sort of gone underground since the civil rights era. You couldn't be overtly racist in a position of power. You know, like George Wallace, I think, was one of the last proper openly racist people. But, you know, people like Reagan, people like Nixon, George Bush, both of them, they're all racist in my opinion. But what happened is you'd have to be polite about it and you'd have to be insidious about it because American society in general didn't tolerate open racism anymore. But that doesn't mean America wasn't a racist country still. So that's how someone like Trump gets in, because America is still fundamentally racist and not enough has ever been done to address the race problems. Like, I always found it really interesting in the People vs. O.J. Simpson, the TV series. You have people like Johnny Cochran and everything, and you have all these innocent killings of black men by police and stuff, and that still goes on today. But it's just, it's insane how it goes on. Like, there's a through line from Jim Crow to now, and then you have things like the documentary about the 13th Amendment, you know, the way prisons use prisoner labour, pay them like $1 a day for like construction labour, but most of these people are black, and that plays into, like, you know, school to prison pipeline, private prisons, and disproportionately putting African Americans in prison for non-violent drug crimes and everything. And so the system is institutionally racist, and I think someone like Trump becoming president, I just think reflects that sort of soul of America, a country that is fundamentally built on native genocide and the slavery of Africans. And obviously you have some lofty ideals thrown in there, like Declaration of Independence and the Bill of Rights and everything, but I think people forget the context in which these were written. And, you know, a lot of it was written by slave owners and plantation owners and people who killed a lot of natives, including George Washington, who committed a sort of genocide against them before he led the revolution. So I think Trump reflects a lot of things about American society that Americans have deluded themselves since the end of the Cold War. And I think America has this problem with deluding itself that it isn't these things. So, you know, like the city on a hill language used by Obama, used by Ronald Reagan, you know, America is sort of like a refuge, you know, all the immigrants should come here, and if you work hard enough, you know, in the American dream, you'll become a successful citizen, and one day you might even become president. And that's what Americans have deluded themselves into, but fundamentally it's a country built on racism that has never shied away from it. And even when you got the first black president, which is a massive success, we haven't had a black prime minister or anything, and we probably won't be close to in the next 20 years, I'd say. And that's a massive achievement, and that shows that there are a lot of good people in America and a lot of progressive people in America. But what Trump reflects is that half the country essentially are totally okay with old school racism and brazen racism. And I think that's a point to Trump as this figure, is that, America hasn't successfully dealt with their racism. And if you watch Black Klansman at the end, you watch a film about the KKK in the 70s, and then you cut to Trump and Charlottesville, and it's really, Spike Lee's sort of saying, what's the difference here? It's pretty much the same, and it's made a comeback, but it's always been bubbling under the surface, and people like David Duke helped make racism and segregation and all this sort of stuff more polite and more normalised, so you could put it into the mainstream without being called out. Someone like George Wallace, openly racist segregationist, that doesn't work anymore, so we got to be like David Duke and Donald Trump and sort of normalise and dog whistle and everything, but we'll still play to the racist heart of America. So yeah, there's two things. I think the worship of money, the worship of capitalism, and the racist undercurrent in America and what it was built on, I think both factor in to why Donald Trump became president and what he represents as the president of the US. Now, I think what's even more embarrassing for Americans is not even the fact that, Donald Trump got elected in the first place, is that people have just bowed down to him. So think of all the GOP, think of a lot of Democrats who've gone along with his war budgets and everything, and think of the population who defend him. Like, this guy is a legitimate person, like he's a legitimate figure, not the fact that he is obviously a con man, he's obviously a criminal who's gotten away with so much shit. Everything Michael Cohen is going to jail for, Donald Trump did as well, but because he's a president, he's sort of untouchable at this point, just because the right wing in America just have so much control. But think of millions and millions of people, maybe 100 million people, maybe more in America, support this guy and look up to him and be like, that's my president, I'm proud of that guy. Someone who can barely talk properly, someone who doesn't understand the basic fundamentals of government, the basic fundamentals of foreign policy, someone who basically doesn't understand anything and has had so much privilege in his life, he's never been told no, so he thinks he is the smartest guy in the room. And it goes to show how far American education and things like socialism have not taken root in America, because how can so many people support someone like that? The fact is, I think, I've said this before, someone like Donald Trump in terms of his politics could exist in Britain. So I think Nigel Farage, but I don't think he's even a great example. Someone like Tommy Robinson's probably a better example, someone who's openly racist, and people like that do exist in the UK. But at the same time, you can't act like this really rich billionaire, someone who's never even had to work for a living, really, and act also like you're a man of the people and you know what it's like to struggle with the working class and stuff. And I think that's what the difference is, because Nigel Farage and Tommy Robinson, especially in Farage's case, he's very wealthy, but he plays it off as being working class and helping these people, going to the pubs and drinking beer, marching down from the north to London with all the people, and he sort of paints himself as a working class hero. So that makes sense that his sort of bigotry and stuff is accepted a lot more, and it makes sense how someone could be conned into accepting him as this sort of hero. But it's insane to me that Trump, a guy with gold toilets that he had back in the day, a guy who apparently is a billionaire, a guy who inherited all his money and is insanely stupid as well, and people in America look at that and be like, yeah, he definitely cares about me, because he said he did, he said he wouldn't let the coal jobs go and everything like that. And how dumb do you have to be to believe that coming from someone like that? And I think that also speaks to the spread of fake news, like people not checking where news is from and what the sources are. I think it's the same with Trump. People believe in everything he says, but he lies so much. He lies almost every single thing that comes out of his mouth is a lie. Everything he tweets is nearly a lie. And how can you believe someone's so disingenuous? And that's the same with fake news. And I think it goes to show a lot of boomers as well who support him, over 50, over 60s and everything like that. Just spreading this fake news and spreading Trump propaganda, just accepting everything he says as fact. And it's just really depressing. Trump has exposed how fundamentally stupid a large amount of Americans are. And don't get me wrong, a lot of people in England are also very stupid, but I think it takes an even greater deal of stupidity to believe a billionaire who's never worked for anything in his life is a champion of the working class, and I think that is something that couldn't happen here, because while people might get swindled by rich people, it's intelligent rich people. So for example, like the Tories and people like Nigel Farage who paint themselves as working class, or people like Tommy Robinson who like is pretty working class. I can understand how you get swindled by that. I can't understand how you get swindled by someone who is just an idiot elitist billionaire. It's just insane to me. So is Trump the worst president ever? No, I don't think he is. I think he's the worst president for America's image, because it makes him just look like idiots. So the last point of this sort of list I want to go into is Christianity and how Trump represents the hypocrisy and the power of white evangelicals. So I think it was 81% of white evangelicals voted for Trump, which is more than any other Republican president. And it's crazy, and it just goes to show the hypocrisy of religion, that a guy who's had 3 wives, and you know, obviously divorce is a big deal in Christianity, he's had 3 wives, he cheated on his 3rd wife and she was pregnant with a porn star, and obviously his 3rd wife was a nude model already, so, you know, aren't Christians meant to be quite conservative? And then he just uses Christianity to help justify his bigotry and white supremacy, and I think that also goes to show that how nationalism in America is mainly Christianity mixed with racism, and it goes really hand in hand. It's interchangeable, and it's not surprising because the history of the African slave trade and the history of the Civil War is all inspired by Christianity. Like, there were bishops who were conflicted about the issue of slavery, but because the Bible endorsed slavery, they went on the Confederate side, even though they knew it was wrong. They're like, well, the Bible supports it, so I'm going to support it as well. And, you know, even most white Christian groups, like most white Catholics, supported Trump. So, you know, I was brought up Catholic, and you have people like Pope Francis and Pope John Paul. Do you think they would really love Trump, or they're like in a similar vein of like, oh yeah, I love the Pope, I also love Trump, he's just like, you know, like the Pope? And I obviously have a problem with the Pope's like covering up all this child abuse and everything, but on the surface, Pope Francis seems like a decent person in general. Doesn't seem like anything like Trump, you know, and it's just weird that so many Catholics supported him. But it pretty much goes to show that most white Christians don't care if a president is Christian, they don't care if the leader is Christian, as long as he gives Christians more power and he helps discriminate against non-Christian groups, and that goes to show another problem with Christianity in America. So obviously I disagree with a lot of Trump's policies, but I'm not really going to get into that too much. In a lot of ways, he's a continuation of people like Bush and even Obama. It's this neo-conservative agenda that, you know, we have to promote the American empire, we have to do what's best for America, we want to make enemies of people so we can take over their land for oil. So example, you know, Trump ripping up the Iran deal because for no reason at all, and all the other people who signed it didn't, like the UK and France and Russia and stuff, because Iran hadn't done anything wrong. But people like John Bolton and the neocons obviously want Iranian oil, and in their ideology it's like, we're going to topple all these theocracies, we're going to topple these dictators and install a pro-American regime, and that's, you know, maybe going to happen in Venezuela as well. So you can see that sort of side of the foreign policy, but it's not unique. You know, Reagan, Nixon, both Bushes all did that, Obama did it to an extent. It's just the outward racism is probably the worst part and the most unusual part, I think, and just the dumping on all America's allies in favour of dictators. So like, he's much nicer to the Brazilian president than he is to Angela Merkel or Theresa May or Macron, and it's a really strange why he loves dictators so much, but I think that's the main thing, that he loves dictators over American allies. But I don't really want to get too much into the policy, you know, it's such a shit show. I'm sure I just missed something because there's so much shit that's gone on. But yeah, I personally hate Trump for being so stupid and so privileged. But I do think what he represents is problems that are deeply rooted in America rather than, you know, someone who got lucky. I think there is support for what he represents, and I think AOC said it best, that although Mueller didn't find collusion, we have to look at America as a nation and ask ourselves, what's gone so wrong that someone like Trump can become president and you know, get so much support, and what is wrong with our politics, you know, whether it is racism, whether it is nationalism mixed with Christianity, whether it is the corporate control of politics. You know, Trump essentially is the swamp, and he was voted in by people who said they wanted a change, and then he gets, you know, the head of Goldman Sachs in his cabinet, I think Gary Cohen, or one of the heads of Goldman Sachs, and all these corporate people, all these neocons that apparently all these Trump supporters are meant to hate, but they don't care because, you know, he validates their racism and he validates all their horrible bigoted beliefs. I can't understand if anyone considers themselves intelligent in any sort of capacity would support Trump, because how can you look at that guy and be like, even if I agree with his politics, which I reckon you're racist if you do, how can you be like, that guy is my president? Because if you're intelligent, you listen to him speak and it just makes you cringe. I can't even listen to his interviews because I'm like, how is this guy the most powerful guy on earth? He's so fundamentally stupid. Like, I could own him on a debate on anything in about 2 seconds because he just doesn't know what he's talking about in any regard to anything. So yeah, that is all my thoughts. I could do a follow-up on this because I didn't really get into the nitty-gritty of Trump. It's mainly what I feel he represents as an outsider looking in on America, and how it's not surprising that they would support someone like that. But the surprising part of Trump is that he's so arrogantly stupid and so openly racist, I think, is the only difference. But I think a lot of his policies you can find in the likes of Nixon, Reagan, Bush, and even Obama to an extent. He just accelerated a lot of his stuff and expanded on it, like the ICE stuff, for example. But yeah, that is my general view on him. And yeah, I obviously hate him, it goes without saying, but I think it's sort of a low bar to just be like, Trump is bad. I think you've got to assess the reasons why he became president rather than be like, this singular figure is evil and then when we get rid of him it'd be great. I think people need to look at the system and look at America as a whole and be like, we have serious problems in this country. We have serious problems with racism, white nationalism, white supremacy, and white Christianity, which we really need to address. That gave rise to Donald Trump, rather than once we get rid of Trump everything will be great. So I hope you guys like the video. If you have any other suggestions for things I should cover in this series, please leave it in the comments. If you want to keep up to date with me on social media and never really miss a video because I post it on social media, follow me at The Tabernacle on Twitter and Instagram. I also have a WordPress and I wrote a lot of things about more academic topics and everything, so go check that out. That is The Tabernacle WordPress. And leave a like if you like this, maybe share it with people if you think I had a good perspective. I know people have been saying they've been trying to share my videos and everything, so I really appreciate that. Please subscribe as well, and if you've made it this far, thank you for watching.